Hello everyone, today's tutorial is for those who are already using R and have been importing and saving their data using the CSV file format. If you are this person, I can imagine opening your folder and see several CSV file in it. So one way to declutter it is to combine all these CSV file in one Excel sheet and save them into different sheets of that Excel. So today's tutorial, I will teach you how to import and save data from and into multiple Excel sheet using R. So let's get our data. So my data is in my desktop, the tutorial folder, and we will be using this Bonnie underscore checklist XLSX file. So if I open this file, I have three sheets: common name, endemicity, and the Dow 2017. So let's read this data in. First, set the directory. So by the way, this library tidyverse, we'll be using this to do some data wrangling later. And to import the data from multiple XLSX file, we will need the R package to read XL. So let's run this. And then we need to create a path of your data. So it's in my desktop tutorial folder. In the data is Bonnie underscore checklist XLSX file. So let's run this and we can check what's inside this tutorial data now. So using the function Excel underscore sheets. So here we now have the common name, endemicity, and the Dow 2017. Now we will import uh, each data or the data that we want from this tutorial data. So we want the common name, for example, we will be using the function read underscore Excel. So if we want to check what's the usage of this function, so let's try to get this portion of the function and here. So our path is tutorial and what we need is common name, for example. So let's change this null and paste common name here. So let's rename this data as CN for common name and run. You can check it by double click and control enter. So now we have imported our data, common name, scientific name, and if it's a mangrove, oops, wrong spelling here, but it's a if it's a mangrove or non-mangrove uh, data. Then if we want to get another data from the same path, then we just have to use the same function and rename it as, for example, we need the endemicity data, so en. So I'll need this same path and copy endemicity and replace the common name. And if you want to check the data, en, so we have here already scientific name and endemicity uh, information. So that's how you import data in from a multiple XLSX file. So what if I want to save my data in a multiple Excel sheets also? So first we need to do some data wrangling. For example, I want all endemic species that has a species epithet of a cauliflorus or cauliflora, something like that. So copy the en and we use the function filter in the rtidyverse package and let's get endemicity that are endemic. So and what we need is to find from my data. So I have 10,000 entries here, so I have a 10,000 species list here. So I have str underscore detect all species in that has a word collie in it. So let's try to run this. Now I have here 19 species that are endemic and with a cauliflora species epithet. So let's rename this as endemic cauli, for example. So let's run this. So now I have a data en cauli. Now I want to save this in a new Excel file. So we will be using the library OpenXLSX to save data into multiple XLSX files. So let's call the library, and then we will create an imaginary data sheet for now. So we'll name it workbook for workbook, and I will create a new workbook. So if I'll check what's inside this workbook or WB, then it's 0 character. So what now I'm creating is the, for example, this one, I want en collie. So data 1, or I'll just name it as like I already have it here. So I'll name it as, the sheet name is en collie. And then, so I will add this worksheet here. So if I want to check the names inside, so I'll just use that line there. So I now have a en collie, but I don't have the data in here yet. So now I will write my data inside this data sheet now. So using the write data function. So WB, I will name it as en collie also, and the data is en collie, and the data is the en collie. This one is this data. So if we run this, and I'll save workbook data, so my workbook here, and I will name it as tutorial 2. So if I'm going back to my folder, I'll see tutorial 2, and if I open it, I have the en collie folder. So I have all the endemic species that have collie in their names. So I just Felicolis cauliflora. So next, I'll close this one, don't save. I want another data, so I'll create another data. So for example, so now let's use from the data CN. So let's write it here. So CN, so what do we have in EN folder, EN data? CN data, so we have all the species that are Pinanga, for example. So I want all the species, so filter all Pinanga species. So STR detect under scientific name, and that contains Pinanga. So let's run. So now I have 7 Pinanga in my list. I want to save this data now. So I'll rename this as Pinanga. So save. Now I have to call my data. So earlier I saved this tutorial to XLSX file. Now I will reload that data here. So I'll be using another imaginary datasheet. So WB load workbook. Earlier I used the create workbook. Now I use load workbook. Run, and then if I check it, I have a en collie inside this tutorial to XLSX file. So now, let's change this. Now I will add a worksheet that names Pinanga, and then run. If I check again the names, so I now have 2 sheets here, the en collie and Pinanga. So I will just use the Pinanga and write Pinanga here. So this one again is the same here, and run. And I will save the workbook in this WB. The name is tutorial to XLSX, and I'll just use overwrite is true. So I'll just add the data inside this tutorial XLSX file. I run that. I can return to my folder and check tutorial 2. So here I have the folder en Collie and Pinanga. So here are my data now. So here, so I have two sheets now. So that's how you save data into multiple Excel sheet. So that's for our tutorial today, and thank you for listening.